Hey y'all, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Taya and this is Taya's Turning Pages. By the title of today's video, you can tell that this is going to be my favorite books of the year. So I did have a lot of books that I really enjoyed and gave 5 stars to, or 4.5 stars to, or books that I just kept thinking about and I considered my favorite, but I did narrow it down to at least 10 because I didn't want this video to be like an hour long. So we're gonna start from number 10 all the way up to number 1. Starting off with number 10, the book is In the Country We Love, My Family Divided by Diane Guerrero. And I already talked about this book, I feel like, so many times on my Bookstagram and in my other videos, so I'm not gonna go too much into it in this one, but I will say that this book is phenomenal. This story does follow Diane Guerrero when she was growing up into her adolescence, and then how she broke into the entertainment industry and became the actress that we know her as today. So for those of you who do not know, Diane Guerrero did play in the show Orange is the New Black, and she played as Maritza, and she also played as Jane's best friend in Jane the Virgin. And so Diane has been, you know, in the industry for quite a bit now, and this book pretty much just talks about what it's like to grow up as a child of undocumented parents. So Diane's family was deported back to Colombia while she was still a child, and she had to go live with, you know, a family friend and pretty much carve out her own way in this country and again figure out how she was going to break into the entertainment industry. And this book was completely heart-shattering and gut-wrenching, but it was so poignant and so inspiring that I just feel like everyone needs to read this book. I am getting into more books that focus on immigration and what it means to be either a child of undocumented parents or just to be an undocumented immigrant yourself. I really, like I said, enjoyed this one, and I think that this is such an important read, so I cannot recommend it enough. If you have not read it yet, please pick it up. It is so good and so moving and so inspiring. So moving to number 9, I am going to lump 2 books into this spot just because they are a part of the same series. I'm sorry. And it is the Primus of Power series. So you have the first book, which is You Had Me at Hola, and then you also have the second book, which is A Lot Like Adios. So this is a companion series, so you don't have to read these in order, but it is more fun to read them that way because characters from the first book do appear in the second book. But starting off with You Had Me at Hola, so this actually follows a soap opera star and a telenovela star, and they're both casted on this show, and they don't know each other at all, but they kind of get off on the wrong foot already. But it isn't an enemies to lovers in the slightest. You thought it was going to be, but it definitely wasn't that, in my opinion. But they get off on the wrong foot and they start to work together and figure out how they're going to navigate, you know, these new roles. They already have an attraction and chemistry. They both can sense it, but they're both trying to fight it because Jasmine, who is the heroine, she just got out of a relationship, and the relationship was very public. Her picture was splashed all over the tabloids, and her boyfriend or ex-boyfriend was caught with another woman. So Jasmine's dealing with all of the, like I said, gossip and tabloid culture that's surrounding that. And then on the flip side, you have Ashton, who is going through a lot of stuff in his own personal life, and he's really trying to keep himself safe as well as his family. He's also suffering from PTSD. So there is a lot going on with both of them individually, so they really don't have time to really worry about necessarily what the other one is going through. But as time goes on, they start to really, like, you know, rehearse their lines together and really start to work on their chemistry for the show, so it's believable for the fans. And these late nights, of course, start to turn into something more, and the story pretty much takes off from there. I loved this book so much. I thought Alexis Daria did an amazing job at writing these characters, but also incorporating real life and real world themes into these books. I felt like we really got to see growth from both of them, especially Ashton, because he was going through a lot, like I said, in his personal life. But I really liked how Alexis Daria also explored, you know, Latinx representation. This show that they were both cast on was ran by like an entire Latinx like cast and staff and all of that type of stuff. I thought that was so nice and so well done, and we really don't get to see or read too many books that are like that. So I thought that was a perfect touch. And I also really love the fact that Jasmine is from New York and Alexis Daria is actually from New York, so you could just feel it like on the pages that Jasmine is a straight up like no BS girl from the Bronx, and I just absolutely thought like that was so cute. And this book also talks about, like I mentioned before, tabloid culture and how detrimental that is for celebrities, but especially women celebrities. So it was definitely like giving me a lot of, like, you know, that early 2000s, again, tabloid culture. So following like Britney Spears and, you know, Paris Hilton and just like all of those type of, like, you know, again, greedy tabloid culture. It just really talked about that and how detrimental that can be to someone. And then we also got topics of ageism because Ashton is a bit older than Jasmine, so he worries about aging out of the industry and his fans not liking him anymore. So there's just so many good themes within this book that I couldn't like not give it a 5-star, you know. And then moving on to A Lot Like Adios, this does follow Jasmine's cousin Michelle, and this is about her love story. So you have two characters in here. You have Michelle and Gabe. So Michelle and Gabe used to be best friends, thick as thieves, and one day Gabe decided to book a one-way trip to California and didn't tell Michelle until the last minute. And when he finally did tell Michelle, she was very and rightfully upset and pretty much told him to go and, you know, have fun. And they fell out. And so Gabe went to California and lived his life, and Michelle stayed in New York and lived her life. So present day now, Michelle is actually a freelancer. So she has her own marketing and PR business and graphic design business. And then Gabe is actually the owner of a gym, and his investor wants him to expand. So they're looking to put a gym in New York. And so Gabe's co-manager reaches out to Michelle and asks for her like services because she's really good again at PR, marketing, and graphic design. But Gabe didn't tell his co-manager that he knows Michelle. So of course Michelle gets his email and does research and realizes that this is Gabe's gym. So she tries to figure out if she wants to help him or she wants to watch him crash and burn. But of course, this is a second chance romance, and it is a friends to lovers. So they do agree to work together, and Gabe comes back to New York. And this story pretty much just follows them, you know, getting to know one another again, but also falling into old routines, but also just unpacking so much baggage and trauma, especially childhood trauma, and working through that. I thought this book was even better than You Had Me at Hola, because this one had so much more depth, and these characters just felt so real and so authentic and so genuine. Like, you were rooting for them. You couldn't not root for them, you know? So I just really thought that this was brilliantly done. Again, Alexis Daria did a phenomenal job at incorporating powerful Latinx representation. This talked about, like I said, childhood trauma and overcoming that. It also talked about what it means to just be connected to your family and never forgetting your roots. Like, so many good topics. So yeah, I do have a reading vlog, like I said, on this, and I will link that somewhere. Definitely check the description box if it's not linked up on the screen here, but please read the series if you have not. It is so good and so worth it. Moving on to number 8, this is a thriller, and it is Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. So I already talked about this in my November wrap up, so again, not going to go too deep into this, but this is about a couple, the Wrights, Mr. and Mrs. Wright, and they are having a very troubling time in their marriage right now. They are like on the brink of divorce. To try to save whatever is left of their marriage, they decide to go on this like retreat slash trip to Scotland, and this trip is actually like, where they're staying at for this trip is in an abandoned church turned into an Airbnb type of situation. So while they're at this church, there is a snowstorm happening, and while they're there, they start to realize that creepy things are happening. They don't know if it's something like ominous and like paranormal, or if there's someone actually like out there like doing these type of spooky things to them. So they're dealing with that, but they're also dealing with their own like internal thoughts. Like, you can tell like with each chapter that both of them are kind of getting a bit more erratic in terms of how they think about one another. So one minute you think that, you know, they're good and like they're really going to try to work on themselves and work on restoring the relationship, but then when you really get into their head, you start to see that they're both like possibly thinking about like killing each other. Like, it is really crazy, and then there's crazy plot twists and all of this type of stuff that happens. So I don't want to go too deep into it. If you want to know my full like synopsis and like review of this book, definitely check out my November reading wrap up. I will link that above again or in the description box below. But this book was a 5 out of 5 stars. Alice Feeney did such a good job with this book. I thought that this was such an addictive and like page turning thriller. I was like on the edge of my seat. I wanted to know more. I wanted to know what was going to happen next, and why are the Wrights really on this trip? Like, are they really here to restore the relationship, or are they really here to take each other out? Or is someone here trying to do that for them? Like, oh, it was so good. I still get chills when I think about the book. But yes, I heard that this is going to be a Netflix, like either TV show or movie, and I'm here for that. I hope we get it soon, and I hope they stick to the script and to the book as close as possible, because I thought the book did such a good job at capturing like the real spooky and paranormal elements that were woven throughout the story. So yes, definitely recommend Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney if you have not read it yet. So the next book that I have here, which is number 7, is very controversial, and again, I think the girls are gonna tussle in the comments, but this is Survive the Night by Riley Sager. Yes, y'all, yes, I'm sorry. I'm a Riley Sager slash Survive the Night apologist. I loved this book. I had so much fun reading it. So this does follow a young woman named Charlie Jordan, who is a college student, and Charlie deals with something very traumatic. Her best friend and roommate actually gets murdered by someone known as the campus serial killer, and so to, you know, deal with this trauma and to really deal with her mental health issues, Charlie decides to leave campus early, and she tries to find a way back home because she doesn't have a car or anything. So she goes to this community board in her dorm and realizes that there's like a rideshare program for like the 1990s, I guess. And so she takes a number, and this guy that was standing right next to her was like looking at the board and was like, oh, I like have a car and I'm like, you know, heading home soon. Like, where do you live at? Like, maybe you're along the way. So Charlie tells him, he says, oh yeah, like your house or like your area is on the way. You can just ride with me. So hesitantly, Charlie agrees. And while she starts packing up and getting into the car with this man, and as they're driving, she starts to notice weird things, and she starts to think that maybe this man could be this campus serial killer, aka survive the night. So like I said, I had fun reading this. I gave this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. This book was fun. It was camp. And I know a lot of people did not like this book. I know this book is very polarizing, and I understand why people don't like it, because Charlie does things that don't make sense. And the ending also was really weird, and I just didn't understand why Riley Sager went in that direction. But I thought the book was excellent, in my opinion. I was actually looking at one of Haley Hughes's videos, and she is a therapist, I'm pretty sure. And she talked about like how the book read to her as like a therapist and how she was analyzing Charlie. And she thought that Riley Sager, I think, did a pretty good job at like representing what Charlie was going through in terms of like her mental health issues. So I thought that was really interesting, and I'm glad that like Haley said that, because now like makes me feel even better like liking the book. So yeah, but either way, I thought Charlie was like a fascinating character. I thought she was so fun. I loved the whole like movie shtick about her. She was a movie buff. She could tell you any movie, any year it came out, any character, and I just thought that was so cool. I like how people have their own like hobbies and like interests, and I just thought that was really cute, and it added a personal touch to the story. And I also just really love the whole 90s aspect of it with like, you know, the cassette tape and the CD players and Blockbuster. Like, I just loved all of those little O's and references and like little Easter eggs. So I thought that was really cute. But either way, the book was fun. Like, y'all are just gonna have to like, y'all are gonna have to move around me. I'm sorry, that book was fun. I am a Survive the Night apologist, so yeah, I don't know. Moving on to number 6, and the book that I have in this spot is Luck of the Titanic by Stacey Lee. And this is honestly a surprising read, because I don't read a lot of historical fiction books. I don't. And the ones that I have read, I did not really care for, but this one, I still think about this book to this day. This book actually follows a young woman named Valora Luck and her twin brother Jamie, but more so Valora. So Valora is an aspiring acrobat. She really wants to be like a circus performer, and so she decides to like leave her old life behind and board the Titanic. And she has to sneak on the Titanic because she is Chinese, and Chinese passengers were not allowed on the Titanic, of course. So she finds a way to sneak herself on, and it was really cool how she did it. She like put her acrobat skills to use and got on the Titanic, but she ended up boarding, and now she's just trying to like lay low and make sure that she doesn't get caught, because she really, like I said, wants to make it to America to become an acrobat. But word of mouth happens, and she hears that the owner, I think, of the Ringling Brothers is aboard the Titanic. So she wants to find Jamie, because Jamie is also on the Titanic, and she realizes that later. But she wants to get Jamie and like audition for this man, so that way he could possibly like include them in, you know, the circus. So Valora and Jamie are trying to practice and figure out like, you know, how this audition is gonna go. But while they're dealing with that and also getting up to shenanigans with the other characters, the Titanic collides with an iceberg, and Jamie and Valora and the rest of the passengers have to figure out how they are going to survive. So yes, this book was so beautiful. It was so sad and like so heartbreaking at the end, but it was like a bittersweet like ending. Like, I understood why Stacey Lee wrote it and why she did that, but it still made me really sad nonetheless. So yeah, I did rate this a 5 out of 5 stars, and like I mentioned before, I'm not the biggest historical fiction person, but because this one had the Titanic involved in it, I knew I was going to like it. I've always been fascinated with the Titanic, the sinking, and just like, you know, how it even happened in the first place. So I knew I was going to really like this, and I really love the whole circus performer aspect of it. And Valora was just such a sweet character, like not a mean bone in her body, okay? She was so sweet and so kind, and she was really just trying to be a circus performer, y'all. That's all she wanted. She just wanted to be an acrobat, okay? And Jamie was also really cool. The side characters were really nice, and there was even a little love interest for Valora at some point, but it wasn't like the main point of the story, because again, like, she's trying to survive. Like, they're all trying to survive, right? So yeah, but either way, I thought this book was beautifully written, and I think Stacey Lee did a great job at memorializing the, I think, 8 passengers that were aboard, the 8 Chinese passengers that were actually aboard the Titanic. I think 6 of them survived, but there's really no record of them because, again, like, racism. So yeah, but I'm really happy that Stacy got to write this story and she was able to do a lot of research and, you know, really try to figure out as much as she could regarding these passengers, and again memorialize them through this book. Even in the dedicated page, she like has like, you know, a little like excerpt or like a little ode to them. So I just thought that this book was so well done, and again beautifully written, and I still think about this book to this day. I read this back in the summertime and I still sit there and think about like, wow, that ending was so like heartbreaking, but it was so good and it made sense. I think if she would have made it any other way, it would have just sold the story short, but she did what she needed to do, and I'm like really looking forward to reading more from Stacey Lee. Next book that I have here is coming in at number 5, and it is The Black Kids by Christina Hammonds Reed. So this is a YA novel that takes place in I think 1992 in Los Angeles, and this does like follow the Rodney King verdict as well as the LA riots, like so before, during, and after all of that, right? So Ashley, so this does follow a young black girl named Ashley who is very well liked, very popular, very rich, and she always hangs out with the white kids, but she notices the black kids, the few black kids that do go to her school, and she's always kind of wondering to herself like, I wonder what it'd be like to hang out with them, or they probably wouldn't accept me because they always see me hanging out with like, you know, white people, etc, etc. So she's dealing with emotions of that, and while all of that is going on, and she's dealing with also just, you know, being a teenager and getting ready for like prom and all that stuff, she recognizes that, you know, LA is about to be in turmoil, and then it is plunged into turmoil because the Rodney King beating happened, and then of course it was caught on tape, and the officers that were responsible for the brutality were put on trial and they were acquitted. So LA broke out into riots because of this, and there was just a lot of chaos and mayhem that was happening during that time. And so you really get to see what, you know, life might have been like during that time period, especially from the eyes of Ashley, who again is very privileged, very well liked, very popular, and doesn't really recognize the struggles that black people have to face on a day-to-day basis, just because she is so sheltered, you know. So this book is a coming of age story. It follows again Ashley coming to terms with her race and her identity and her culture, and also getting to like fall in love along the way, because she starts to really take a liking to this one boy that is in, you know, the black kids crowd. His name is LaShawn. He's a basketball player. He's like the perfect boyfriend for Ashley, to be honest, but they start to form a bond and a connection, and you get to see these two like navigating again like the LA riots and how black people are being treated during this time in particular. So this book was just like phenomenal. 5 out of 5 stars. This was a true ode to black personhood. I think Christina Hammonds Reed did a great job at showing that black people are not a monolith, and that we are all different, and we're all just trying the best, you know, we can to survive and to just exist in this world. And I really liked how Ashley, you know, learned and unlearned a lot of what she was taught, you know, growing up. I just really thought that it was important, and it was very accurate for, I feel like, a lot of black folks, to be honest, especially like myself, because I can relate to Ashley in that regard in terms of growing up in predominantly white spaces. So I know exactly what she was going through internally and trying to balance, like, you know, that part of her life, but also like, you know, this other part of her life and all of this other stuff. So yeah, I really liked Ashley's character. Some people might think she's unlikable, but I really liked her character. And again, I liked LaShawn. I liked all of the other black kids. I saw myself in every single one of them, and I saw a lot of my friends in every single one of them. So this book was just great representation from start to finish. And I just loved how I also loved how Christina Hammonds Reed spent an entire like section analyzing the black girlhood experience, and how black girls and women's experiences are a bit more convoluted and complex and nuanced compared to other groups. She did also explore Latasha Harlan's murder and how that really impacted a lot of, you know, the LA riots, but also black people, but specifically black girls in general. So yeah, I can't say enough great things about this book. I am going to reread this one again next year and annotate it, because it was just so good, especially for a YA novel. I thought it was just executed well. We're almost done, y'all. Coming in at number 4, we have Everything We Didn't Say by Nicole Bart. It's a book of the month pick. I'm pretty sure this was either October or November, but this is marketed as a thriller, but I don't classify it as a thriller. I think it's more so of a mystery slash whodunit, especially like a lyrical mystery slash whodunit book. So this follows a young woman named Juniper Baker, who was originally from this small town named Jericho, Illinois, I think, and she ends up leaving Jericho because of 2 things. So this is all in the synopsis, but one, her neighbors who she really liked, named Mr. and Mrs. Murphy, were murdered, and the murder was technically unsolved. But a lot of people in the community think that Juniper's brother was the one that committed the murders, so a lot of people don't like her family. And then the second thing that happened was Juniper ended up getting pregnant, and because her mom and her dad wanted, like, I guess a better life for her, they decided to raise her daughter and let Juniper go off to college somewhere else. So Juniper has been away from Jericho for years, and she finally decides to return to, one, reconnect with her daughter, who is now a preteen, but to also solve the Murphy murders once and for all. So while she's back in Jericho and she's trying to, you know, do both of these things, she realizes that things from her past are starting to bubble up to the surface, and bad things are starting to happen because she's digging closer and closer and deeper into the truth about that night that the Murphys were murdered. So yes, this story was really good. I really enjoyed it. It was so lyrical, like I mentioned. It definitely reminded me of Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens, which I love that book. So this book was right up my alley. Again, I just think that it should be marketed as a mystery / whodunit versus a thriller, but either way, I thought this book was executed very well. Nicole Bart wrote this during lockdown, so it just feels like this story was fleshed out. There's dual timelines. You also have that small town, everyone knows everyone knows everyone's secrets type of situation. And again, also just that like ominous feeling of like, yo, who murdered the Murphys? Juniper doesn't believe that her brother is the one that committed these murders, but there are some things kind of not adding up when it comes to her brother. So you're kind of sitting back wondering like, wait, did he really do it? So yeah, this story had a lot of like, you know, just twists and turns, especially towards the end. I was thrown off by the ending. Like, I did not expect that to happen. I was completely off base, and I did not see like it coming. Like the killer reveal, I did not know it was going to be this person, but I really liked it and I thought it was done well. So yeah, I can't wait to read more from Nicole Bart, hopefully in the new year. But either way, read this book if you haven't. Don't listen to the negative reviews. It's a really good book. It's mismarketed. It's mismarketed, but it's a good book. The next book that I have here is a romance and is coming in hot at number 3, and it is Ramona Julieta by Alana Quintana Albertson. So I was approved for this on NetGalley, so shout out to NetGalley and Berkeley Publishing once again for this. I did already talk about this in my November wrap up, and I went into the synopsis and everything, so I will link that again above or below. But quickly, I will say that this is a Romeo and Juliet retelling, and it does follow a woman named Julieta and a man named Ramon. And Julieta is a hardworking, like, working class woman. She has her own business with her mom, and it really is just her and her mom because her father passed away not too long ago, and so this business is everything to her. She makes tacos, like authentic tacos, frijoles, taquilleros, tamales, etc. And like her restaurant is like a staple in their community. Like everyone loves this restaurant, and Julieta is so kind. She goes out of her way to give, you know, free food to like the children in the neighborhood, etc. So she's just so sweet. And then the flip side, you have Ramon, who is a shrewd businessman. He's very into just like, you know, making a profit and, you know, making sure that he can like expand his business, and he runs this business called the Taco King with his father, and this is a franchise, so they're looking to expand and they want to put one in the neighborhood where Julieta's restaurant is, but they want to put it exactly where Julieta's restaurant is. So you get to follow these two, you know, figuring out like how they're going to like navigate a relationship, but also navigate like talking to Ramon's father to make sure that like he doesn't ruin Julieta's business and all of this other stuff. There's also other elements that are woven into this that like make this story come together very nicely. But again, I don't want this video to be super long, but I definitely recommend looking at my November reading wrap up to look at like the synopsis or to hear it in full, because I read the entire thing. But it is so good. Like I said, it's a Romeo and Juliet retelling, but it's from like the Mexican standpoint, and I loved it. This book made me so hungry. I wanted every single food that was listed in here. The only thing I would have wished is that Alana would have put recipes for these foods in here, because they just sounded so good, like mouth-watering good. So yeah, I really love the food aspect. I love the actual love aspect. I will say it is insta-lovey, and that's because it is Romeo and Juliet. Like, just like with the original play, they do fall in love pretty quickly, but I still thought it worked well, and I thought it was paced well. And I also really loved how authentic this book was to me in terms of Mexican culture. You really get a lot of odes to Dia de los Muertos, which is the Day of the Dead. You also get a lot of odes to just, you know, the music, the culture, the colors, the food, etc. It just felt like this was like a love letter to Mexico and Mexican heritage, and I just thought that it was so beautiful, to be honest. I love learning about other cultures, and this book was just right up my alley. It gave me all of the feels that I needed, you know? So yes, I cannot wait until this debuts next year. I'm pretty sure it comes out in February. I think February 1st it comes out. I will put the correct date here if I got it wrong. I just hope that this gets a lot of love and a lot of praise, because Alana deserves it, because this book was so good. Right, y'all, we are almost done. We are on the second book. So it is a romance. Can you guess what it is? I'll give you a minute. You guys should already know if you watch my videos. I always talk about this book. It is It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. Yes, this is number 2. I said that this was going to be my top 3, and it made it to number 2. This book, phenomenal, sensational, brilliant, stunning. We loved this book, and we love Tessa Bailey's writing style, period. Tessa Bailey is an autobiography author for me. I recently read Window Shopping because my book club and I picked this book for, like, you know, Christmas, and I loved it. I ate it up, no crumbs. So yeah, Tessa Bailey is that girl. But anyways, back to It Happened One Summer. This book does follow a young woman named Piper who is very high maintenance. She's very accustomed to the finer things in life, and she is a social media influencer, so she does have a platform. But Piper is really just like living life day to day. Like, you know, she's living life to the fullest, but she's also kind of living it day to day. Like, she really doesn't see the bigger picture. She doesn't really value the worth of $1, and her stepfather actually like fuels her lifestyle for the most part. But Piper ends up getting in trouble one day, and her stepfather had enough and decides to send her to this like remote fishing town that her biological father grew up in, so that way she can learn the value of $1, but also to just like ground herself, to be honest, and like really understand what it's like to be like a working class adult. So he sends her there, and Piper's sister Hannah decides to join her. So they go to a fishing town, and of course when they arrive they stick out like sore thumbs because they're both, you know, coming from a very high maintenance lifestyle to this town, and everybody knows everybody. Everybody is a local, and this town is known for crab fishing. So they're very rural, very rugged, and like they look at Piper and Hannah kind of like, what are these like valley girls doing coming up in here, disrupting our town? So on the flip side, you have the male protagonist, which is Piper's love interest, Brendan, and Brendan is like the Teflon Don. Okay, he is like the king of the crop here. Everyone respects Brendan, everyone loves him because Brendan is like the top crab fisherman, and he has his own boat, his own crew, and he brings in a lot of money for the town because of this crab fishing business. So Brendan is like very well respected and well loved in this town, but he is very standoffish. He's pretty like mean, and he does not like change. He's very type A and by the book. So when he sees Piper and Hannah stroll in, he's already like instantly annoyed, and he is just so like bothered by their presence because again, he is really used to change, and he can tell that Hannah and Piper are outsiders. But him and Piper keep having these run-ins, and you can tell like right off the bat, like sworn enemies. They cannot stand each other. He's very mean to Piper, but Piper is really good at keeping up with him and like putting him in his place, which I really appreciated. But of course, as time starts to goes on, they start to get to know each other a bit better, and their walls start to come down, and they start to get to realize that maybe they're not that different from one another, and the story takes off from there. So this book, great, I loved it. Like I said, this is a Schitt's Creek inspired story. I never watched that show, but I just wanted to mention that in case you love that show and you didn't know that about this book. But I loved Piper. Like I mentioned before, I think that Tessa Bailey wrote her very well. I love when women authors write like high maintenance women characters and don't let other characters like bash them for it or make them feel bad about it, you know, because I feel like, again, we have a lot of high maintenance characters that are written into books, and I feel like a lot of people poke fun at them because they are high maintenance. They look at them as a ditz, as a shopaholic, and it's like, we don't gotta do all of that, you know, we don't gotta do all of that. So I really like that she made Piper like very like, you know, secure in herself in that sense, and Piper knew like, listen, I like nice things, period. So I like that. I also really liked how kind and charismatic she was. She was that type of girl where you would hear people say like she lit up every room she walked in. Like that was definitely her and her personality. Very sunshine, very bubbly, very happy-go-lucky. Even though she was in this situation that she didn't want to be in, she was still very like kind to everyone that she came in contact with. And then on the flip side, you have Brendan, who I did not like. I did not like him in the beginning. He was very obnoxious, very rude, very misogynistic, and I was really like wondering like, should I be rooting for him, because he is not nice like at all, especially to Piper. He's not nice, and he was going through a lot like personally, but still he didn't need to take out all of his frustrations on Piper, because like, dude, like she is from, like, she belongs in this town just as much as you do. Her daddy like ran this town when he was alive, you know. So like I don't know, I just did not like Brendan in the beginning, but as time went on he started to redeem himself a little bit, so like whatever. But either way, this story was just really cute, and it had so much more to it than just romance. You had to deal with, Piper had to really come to terms with dealing with like loss and the death of a parent that she never really even knew. She also got to learn again the worth of $1 and what it means to work. She also got to just lose herself, but also rediscover herself and rebrand herself essentially and become a person that she was proud of. And she also had a lot of insecurities that she was able to like work on, and I loved it. It was such a good story, a good freaking story, and I think that this book deserves all of the praise. So I'm like on the hunt for another romance book that will top this one in the new year, but like I don't know, y'all, I don't know. Tessa Bailey is like one of my favorite authors right now. Like I am so tempted to read everything in her backlog because she knows how to write. She knows how to write romance, and she knows how to write smut. Like we have to give Tessa Bailey her flowers, okay, because she deserves it. she should be talked about a lot more than what she is, in my opinion. Y'all, we have one more book left, and it is a thriller. It did not come out this year, but I did read it this year, so I'm including it anyway. But can you guess what it is? If you watch my videos consistently, you already know what book this probably will be, but it is No Exit by Taylor Adams. Yes, I feel like everybody that read this book this year probably put this in their favorite books of the year pile, and as they should, because this book did what it needed to do. So this is about a young girl named Darby Thorne who is on her way home from college because her mother is sick, so she wants to go see her mom, of course. And so she's driving through this like raging snowstorm, and her car isn't the best, so she decides to pull over at this rest stop, and she parks, goes inside. She notices that there are 4 other people there, but she doesn't really pay them any mind. She goes to the bathroom, gets some coffee, and then she steps outside again to get some cell reception and to also get some air. But while she's out there, she realizes that there is a little girl trapped in a cage in the trunk of someone's car. And so now Darby has to figure out how she's going to get herself and this little girl out of the situation alive, meaning no exit. So yeah, like I said, snowstorm, no cell reception, Darby is trapped in the middle of nowhere, and the story pretty much takes off from there. So you find out early on who the antagonist is, but the book more so focuses on the like aftermath of it. So how is Darby again going to get out of the situation? It is so action-packed, so like spine-chilling, nail-biting, all of that type of stuff. My heart was pumping when I was reading this book, and I finished it in one night because it was so good and I needed to know what happened next. And I was actually really afraid to go to sleep at night. I'm not gonna lie to y'all, I was scared to go to bed. Especially like the whole like isolation trope, like no exit, no way of getting out, and she's snowed in, so like the snow is also hindering her and not letting her run away. Like that really got me, and Taylor Adams did a phenomenal job at really creating like an experience for the reader. I feel like he did a good job of creating an experience for the reader where, like I said, you are on the edge of your seat, you're biting your nails, pulling your hair, trying to figure out how is Darby going to get out of this, but also putting yourself in her shoes and wondering if you would have the brave and courageousness that she had to do half of the things that she did. I don't know, man, I don't know, but either way, Darby showed up and showed out, and I thought Taylor Adams did a good job at really writing her character. I feel like we have a lot of male authors that don't do a good job at writing women characters, but I think Taylor Adams did a phenomenal job. Darby was very likable in my opinion for me, and she was such a tough girl. She did everything she could to try to like save herself and this little girl, and I just really enjoyed the book. I thought it was so good. I can't say enough great things about it. This is going to be turned into a movie finally. I think Hulu is taking it on, and Gloria from Gloria Z Thompson here on BookTube, she told me that it's going to be turned into a movie, so shout out to her for that. I cannot wait to see it. It's going to be so good, I hope. So y'all knew that this book was going to be #1 because I cannot shut up about this book, okay? So yeah, and I have no regrets. I wanted to quickly say that I'm going to do a few honorable mentions. I'm not going to go into the synopsis or my thoughts here, but like just know that these are my honorable mentions, and these were like my almost favorites, you know? Like, so shout out to Caroline Johnson for that like inspiration. She did a whole video about it, but I'm just gonna quickly, just like I said, do honorable mentions / my almost favorites. So in no particular order, we also have Ace of Spades, The X Talk, When the Reckoning Comes, Beach Read, The Meaning of Mariah Carey, Concrete Rose, The Picture of Dorian Gray, Good Rich People, and The Chalk Man. All right, y'all, and those are my top 10 favorite books of 2021. This list was so hard to narrow down because I read so many great books this year, and it was just, like I said, it was really, really hard. I had like 22 books, and I had to scale it down, but I still sprinkled some of them in for like, you know, honorable mentions. But either way, I'm really happy with pretty much all the books that I read this year, like I said. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please make sure you subscribe, and also follow me on Bookstagram if you're interested in keeping up with me in real time, and you can also see what I'm currently reading and what I'm doing, etc, etc. So yes, I will leave that information in the description box below, but it will also be at the end of the video as well. So I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.